And this is Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Paradise After Dark is an independent podcast covering true crime,
unsolved mysteries,
missing people,
and some urban legends.
If you'd like to support our show and get a bunch of extra Paradise After Dark content, sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/Palmahawk Media. That's Palmahawk Media.
And be sure to check out our website at paradiseafterdark.com.
On the website, you'll find links to all of our episodes, even the archived episodes, our mailing list, merch store, links to our social media, and, of course, our Patreon.
Yeah, we also have a little virtual tip jar on there, so if you want to get a shout-out on the show, just drop a little tip in the jar, and we'll give you a shout-out.
And, again, we are back with another bonus safety episode.
Yeah, this guy is pretty amazing.
Again, last year at CrimeCon, I met Spencer Coursen. Spencer is a threat management expert, founder of Coursen Security Group, and author of the best-selling book, The Safety Trap, a security expert's secrets for staying safe in a dangerous world. And it was such a pleasure to talk to him. We had great conversation. He had a lot of great things to say, a lot of insight, a lot of tips, talking about his book, talking about how to stay safe, things that you guys wouldn't even think of. Obviously, you want to read his book, The Safety Trap, but also this interview, I was blown away by the amount of information that I got in the conversation that we had. So
yeah, Lauren, there are portions of his book that when you read, you're like, he's taking a whole different look at certain aspects. So you take a certain events in time, and you can it almost like every event he can apply to you. I mean, talking about like driving to the soccer field and having stickers on your car and things like that. I mean, it literally blows your mind because you don't realize how much information you're actually radiating as you drive through traffic and that people can pick up.
Right.
So it's amazing the stuff that this guy tells and speaks in such a way that you can understand it and you can apply it to your life. And so Safety Trap is an amazing tool that I think everyone, like you said before, men and women should all read.
Yes.
It's literally mind-boggling.
I read the book, and then I actually downloaded the audiobook and listened to the audiobook, which I actually prefer the audiobook. And if you listen to this interview I'm going to play for you right now, you'll understand why. So please enjoy this interview with Spencer Coursen. Take from it what you will. It's a great talk about being safe, staying safe in a dangerous world.
And we live in a dangerous world.
All right. Hi, everyone. This is Lauren from Paradise After Dark podcast, and I am here with Spencer Coursen, who is a threat management expert, founder of Coursen Security Group, and author of the best-selling book, The Safety Trap, a security expert's secrets for staying safe in a dangerous world. Spencer, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. It is my
absolute pleasure to be here.
So tell me a little bit. You are a threat management specialist. What exactly is that?
Me and my firm help good people to make bad things better. That can sort of, I kind of joke, I'm like half Ray Donovan, half Olivia Pope, but all completely legal.
All right.
So about 1/3 of my business, I would say, is your more quintessential threat assessment, threat management protocol. Hey, this guy is saying he's going to kill me. What is the likelihood of that express threat to escalate into harmful action? They have already chosen words which are alarming me. How likely are they to actually, invest the time, effort, and energy, do the research and planning? Do they have the means, motive, and opportunity to actually harm me? That's your typical threat assessment. And that kind of ranges everything from like the CEOs to the public figures, the celebrities, the media types, those who are more public facing and have those inappropriate pursuers coming after them. About 1/3 of my business is red teaming and doing physical security assessments. So if you want to know how good your physical security is, or how good your cybersecurity is, or how good your protective detail may be, you can hire me and my firm to come in and sort of either conduct a full spectrum assessment and tell you what the favorable findings are, what are the critical concerns, what are the suggested enhancements, or we can actually red team you, where we will actually try to penetrate your defenses. So if anyone's familiar with the movie Sneakers with Robert Redford back in the day, where, maybe you try to break into a bank, or you try to sneak into the Super Bowl, or you try to breach whatever parameters are in place to identify the inherent vulnerabilities that are most likely to be exploited by those with nefarious intent. And then about the final third of my business is what I would call like litigation support, where we help those who are either being stalked or blackmailed, or are going through, or maybe I'll be involved in like a wrongful death suit where security failures were a part of the mitigating factors, to help the lawyers. I'll either serve as an expert witness, or I will actually sometimes even serve as an advocate for the victim with the authorities in the district attorney's office, or even sometimes the prosecutors, to help them fully understand how the threat dynamic, and how sometimes people who are on the pathway to violence can sometimes how important it is to identify those pre-incident indicators of harm before harm actually happens. And then that's about 90%. And then there's another 10% where it just could be some kind of crisis management concern, some kind of like one-off concern that a client may have.
The fixer. That's the fixer part.
The fixer part. But that's pretty much the bread and butter of my business. Okay.
Well, that explains a lot. So I know that you were an airborne ranger. Is that correct?
I was. Yeah. After college, while I was in college, I did an internship with the Justice Department. And at the time, wanted to go work for the FBI or the Secret Service, but you needed 3 years post-collegiate experience to go work for the government. So the people at the Justice Department were like, well, hey, why don't you just go into the military? It'll make for a nice, you get your weapons and tactics training, you get your security clearance. It'll make for a nice lateral transition. It was 1999. There was absolutely nothing going on in the world.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, sure. Let me join the Army. My parents were thrilled, by the way, because, they had just spent all that money on a college education for me to enlist in the Army. But it all worked out.
That's kind of funny. I'm going to tell you a little something about me. My whole dream, I have been into crime more so when I was younger, behavioral science. And my whole goal, we're talking when I was like 12, this started. I wanted to.
Did you read like John Douglas, like Mindhunter?
Yes, I read Mindhunter when I was like 14. I read all John Douglas's books. And so my whole goal was to join the FBI and be in the behavioral science unit. And I literally joined the Navy as a master at arms, which, if listeners don't know, that is a Navy police officer. Because I was told that if you had military experiences, your chances of getting accepted into Quantico were much more, but life happened, and I didn't end up going into the FBI. I ended up being a podcaster. So here we are.
It's a much safer choice.
It is. You're right. It is a safer
Although
choice.
Speaking, but have you been watching like Mindhunter, or
yes.
It was on, which was like about the formation of the behavioral science unit?
Yes.
Yeah. Fincher is just a master of suspense in that show. He's so
I heard that a third season is coming. I don't know when.
Yeah. Fincher gave some kind of interview where they were like, Netflix was like, it's not coming back. Fincher was like, well, there might be one more season. We're like, hey man, come on. Like there is or there isn't. Don't, because
right.
I really, because they were like, they kept teasing like BTK in the beginning, like all through that series, and like,
right, exactly. We need solutions to that.
Give me one more 10 to 12 episode season. Wrap it up, put a bow on it.
How did you, like I said, I knew that you were in the Army, an airborne ranger. So how did you become a threat management expert? How did you get into this business? Yeah, so after the Army, I wound up working for the government for a little bit, doing protective security work on the diplomatic side. I was with the International Monetary Fund for a number of years. So I think I did something like 300 protective missions to about 163 different countries, traveling basically all over the world. It was like one of those jobs where like every morning you would wake up and have to like look at the currency in your pocket to remember which country you were in, which was a lot of fun. And that really just provided me with a lot of exposure to global risk and threats that
are intrinsic to just every corner of the globe, not just the stuff that happens in DC or New York or LA, but what are the threats people are facing in Burkina Faso? What are the threats people are facing in Azerbaijan? What are the threats people are facing in, Buenos Aires or Prague or Paris or London or Rome? And then from there, I got recruited to work for Gavin DeBecker and Associates, which at the time was kind of like the
I was so
Secret
going to
Service.
ask you if you had ever read The Gift of Fear. Because
Well,
I've
what's
read
funny
that
is
book
that-
like 3 times.
Yeah, I first read The Gift of Fear, like sitting in a safe house on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border.
Really?
And little did I know that, some 10 years later, I'd be working for the man himself.
Wow.
And so that was a lot of fun because I was at that point, that was more like the red carpets and the runways and doing a lot of like the celebrity, movie star athletes, that kind of stuff experience, which was great. And then from there, actually, that's how I wound up getting brought on to do the Zero Dark 30 consulting, which was a lot of fun.
Now, were you actually in that movie, or were you? Because
Yes, yeah. So I actually have 2, which is why, like, if you Google me today, it still comes up as Spencer Coursen actor.
Yeah,
and then the
that's what I
IMDb
was gonna
page reads
ask.
like is a nationally recognized threat management thing. Yeah, all my friends make fun of this. So I was originally brought on because the production team, the production company was a client of ours, and they were part of the movie, which was going to represent Pakistan, was actually being filmed in Chandigarh, India, which is like on the northern tip of India, but which borders Syria. Yeah. And at the time, Syria, the civil war was raging, and they had like literally just run out of coffins. And so the production crew wanted to make sure, hey, if that should spill over, do we have the necessary protocols in place to get our cast and crew out of here? And so I was asked to sort of come in, ensure scene safety, leverage my contacts with the embassy to make sure that if something did break bad, I'd be in a position to make that bad thing better. And wound up staying on as a security consultant and a military advisor for the production itself. And so there was an actual canine dog named Cairo, a Belgian Malinois, on the actual SEAL raid. And back in Los Angeles, there was an actor and a dog training for that particular role. And as they were flying over to, now we were in Jordan, which was going to double for Abbottabad. The dog, I guess, didn't have the right number of shots or didn't have the correct shots. And so Jordanian customs wouldn't let the dog in. And so the dog and the actor got sent back. And so we're in the chow line one day, and Catherine Bigelow, the director, and Mark Bowl, the screenwriter, came up to me in the chow line. They're like, "Spencer, you were in the Army, right?" I was like, "Yes, ma'am." She's like, "How are you with dogs?" I was like, "Great." She's like, "You're my canine SEAL." And so if you watch that movie and you don't blink and you see a dog, the guy who's at the end of that dog's leash is me.
Well, so, I did see the movie, but I think I saw it when it first came out, and I haven't seen it since. And I didn't have time to watch it to prepare for this conversation with you. So yeah, I actually want to rewatch it now.
Dog walking. The dog walks by. It's like right at the scene where Maya gets the call that they're going to go hit the compound that night, and you start seeing everyone gear up. The dog walks by the fire, and then I'm sitting down with the dog, and then it jumps onto the helicopter to leave for the mission, and then the dog jumps off the helicopter when they get to the compound. And that's my 7.5 seconds of fame.
Well, hey, you got to get it where you can, right?
Yeah. So
well, that's now why you're going to be on Paradise After Dark podcast. So
listen,
you can claim that now.
The luck just keeps getting better and better. I'll take it.
All right. So I want to get in and I want to talk about your book a little bit because I read your book. It was sort of a coincidence. And I can't for the life of me remember, you were on some sort of show, something before CrimeCon. No, we met at CrimeCon. But before CrimeCon, I can't remember what show it was or how I heard about it. But I saw you talking about your book and I said, That sounds like something I would be super interested in because, as I said, I read The Gift of Fear so many times. It's just, I'm a super cautious safety gal, if you will. I've had some experiences which make me super cautious, in general. And so I was like, I'm going to read this book. So I read it. I got it and I read it. And then I actually, a couple weeks ago when we were emailing and deciding that we were going to do this chat, I reread it, but I cheated. I downloaded the audiobook, which I actually really enjoyed because you narrated it. And you sort of have this like deep commanding voice, like listen to what I'm saying. And you know what I mean? It's like, I actually really enjoyed the audiobook because of your voice, I guess. I don't know. I'm being
Let me tell you something. One, thank you very much. And two, doing the audio for the book was harder than writing the book itself.
Really?
Because for one, the book came out like in the middle of the pandemic. So typically if you're going to do an audiobook, like you'll go into a studio, you'll have like a teleprompter and headphones, and you'll be in a soundproof room. I had to do that I was at my old house at the time, from my home office. And I had to soundproof the room with like mattresses and drapes and pile of clothes everywhere. I had a laptop. I had my iPad. I had headphones on, but with ear pods on underneath, because I had to have the producer in one ear, but the sound engineer in the other. And then I sat there with an iPad reading it from a screen. And we did like 10-hour days for like 6 days. And here's the thing. It's not just that, and especially for someone like me who, as I'm reading, I want to keep editing it. And then they're like, no, it has to be read exactly how it's on the screen. But you also have to keep the same tonation and the same volume and the same enthusiasm and the same. But then you also have the sound engineer who's like, okay, can you do that again? Okay, that was good, but with a little more emphasis. Okay, both. So it's like being a protector is a craft. Being a protector is a craft. Being a protector is a craft. Being a protector is a craft I have honed my entire life. Being a protector is a craft I've honed my entire life. Being a protector is a craft I've honed my entire life. And it's like, how many different ways can I say this?
That's actually hilarious.
The outtakes. I would love to put a compilation together of all the outtakes of me reading that book, because they've got to be hysterical, because I myself was laughing through the whole process. But the other thing was that I really thought it was important for the book to be narrated as it was intended to be written.
Right.
You know what I mean? I wanted people to understand, because so much of what I do, like in my consulting realm or when I'm giving speeches, is trying to instill not just the confidence, but to really drive home the importance on.
Wait, stop. Can you say that again? With more enthusiasm?
What I really try to do is not just drive home the importance, but not just instill the confidence, but also underscore the importance of what it is that I'm trying to say. It's both the importance and the confidence that I'm trying to instill.
Maybe what I was trying to say when I said that I enjoyed the audiobook because you narrated it, because it did really portray the importance of what you were saying. I think that's what I was trying to say. So let me ask you straight up, what is the safety trap?
The safety trap is a phrase I coined several years ago when trying to explain to my clients how sometimes feeling safe is the most dangerous thing we do. And what I realized as I was like going through all of my notes, it's funny that you bring up The Gift of Fear, because that was one of the things that we put into my proposal, was that, The Gift of Fear, when Gavin wrote The Gift of Fear, that was such a groundbreaking way to view the threats that we face. And I think the way that Gavin talks about using that gift of fear to not negotiate against our own better instincts is a crucial component of staying safe. But what I wanted my book to do was kind of take that to the next level. Okay, now that you have identified that there's a problem, what can you do to help make it better? So what I did was I went through all my notes and I found these 16 or so safety traps that people kept falling into, whether it be overconfidence or overprotecting children or being too polite or avoidance or false equivalence or us versus them or physical fitness. And basically what I said was, hey, listen, here's an anecdote of something that really happened in the real world. Here's how it was allowed to happen. Here's 5 to 6 things that you can do to keep that thing from happening to you. So that not only could you take a story about, hey, here's something that happened to a CEO of a company, or here's something that happened to a TV star, or here's something that happened to, some celebrity on a movie set. But that same overconfidence, that same avoidance, that same complacency, that same false equivalence are all things that can impact us in our everyday lives. And whether you're the CEO of a big company or the second grader in an active shooter crisis at your school, here are 5 things that you can do to recognize that bad thing's about to happen. Here are 5 things that you can do to keep that bad thing from happening to you. And if all else fails, here are 5 things that you can do to keep yourself safe once that threat has become a reality.
Okay. So I just want to kind of go over a few things. I was taking notes when I was listening to your audiobook. One thing you mentioned in the book was that in the chapter about false authority, one thing you mentioned was that it's better to come back the following day and apologize for either not listening to quote unquote authority or overreacting than it is for you to die. And the example that you used was September 11th, when the Port Authority was telling people to go back up to their office and their instincts were to run. And then the people that went back up, unfortunately, lost their lives. And the people that left survived. And a direct quote that I really took to heart from that chapter was, when your life is on the line, you are your own authority. I don't know, something about that quote, it just stuck with me. And I could think back to even, like you're saying, everyday life situations that this actually applies,
Well, So exactly what you're talking about is what happened was on September 11th, when the first plane hit the first tower, people in the second tower were like, hey, this isn't right. Now, and Malcolm Gladwell talks about this in Blink, about how we make a million micro decisions before we make a single decision that informs that overarching decision. And what the people in the second tower knew was, hey, just a couple of years ago, someone else tried to bomb this building. Now this is happening. I'm just going to get out of here. I don't know what's going on, but I don't feel safe here. I'm going to go somewhere else, figure out what's going on, and then I'm going to come back if it's safe to do so. And so you had a lot of people in that second tower get all the way down to the lobby before being told by the Port Authority people, no, go back upstairs. This building's not under any kind of attack. It was just the first building. Some people said, screw this, I'm going. And other people went, oh, well, this guy in a jacket that says security is telling me to go back upstairs. Like, I better not, I don't want to do anything wrong. And then basically made their way back up to their desk just as the second plane hit the tower.
Right.
There's another example I give about how, there's that old Billy Joel song, the Cold War kids were hard to kill under their desk in an air raid drill. As if being under your desk in an air raid would do anything to keep you safe. Or how in today's active shooter drills, they teach children to, instead of, there's this great overarching philosophy of run, hide, fight, which is, of course, a perfect frame of reference for a pilot who has been taken prisoner in a POW simulation, where if he gets the chance to escape confinement, will run, and then if he gets too tired, will camouflage himself until they can get enough strength to keep running. But then if they're confronted by the enemy again, will fight like their life depends on it, because it absolutely does. But what has happened in the school framework is that run, hide, fight has become run to your hiding spot. And that's not at all what it was intended to do, because very often the shooters of that school, like the number one reason that students attack their school and employees attack the workplace is because, number one, that's where the grievance is usually first, instilled. That's where 2 is where they have the ideation that they can do something about it. 3, the research and planning for that attack can be disguised as their everyday behaviors. 4, they don't have to breach any kind of security defenses because they're supposed to be there. And then what often happens is that 5th, attack is nothing more than the gunshots screaming out, "Hey, can you hear me now?" Because they have acted out. You have so many of these children or so many adults who just simply don't have the emotional intelligence to ask for help. So they act out in a way that all but cries for attention. And then what do? We just apply these punitive responses where we put them in detention and say, "Hey, just sit here, be quiet, because we don't want to deal with you either." And it just exacerbates that problem. And then you compound that even in today's world with this post-pandemic, situation where the mental health crisis is, really a silent killer in our entire society.
Right.
And I think one of the things that I really tried to drive home in that book was that oftentimes a lot of security policies, especially at the organizational level, are constructed for accountability rather than survivability. And so it's very important that you understand who the authors are of those security programs and then who are the promoters of those security programs, because a lot of times they have the collective interest at heart and not your individual interest at heart. Kind of like how the police are in charge of public safety, but they're not in charge of your personal safety. So if there is a bad guy in a building, they don't want everyone else running out because the bad guy may run away too, and that will make their life more difficult. They would much rather everyone stay contained to make the investigation of that crime much more succinct, but will also be able to keep the public safe, at large. But so that's why I say, like, when moments matter most, and in a situation where your life may be at risk, you are your own authority, which is why I think parents need to tell students that it's okay to be disagreeable in those situations where, they just don't feel safe. Much in the same way that, like, if a child felt that, like, someone was touching them inappropriately, they should be able to say, like, "No, stop," and get out of that situation immediately. If a child doesn't feel safe in some kind of a classroom setting or if you as an adult don't feel safe in some kind of an organizational setting, just because some principal or some teacher or some assumed authority figure is standing in front of you telling you not to do something, they only have the authority that you're willing to give them.
And you just gave me the perfect segue into another question I wanted to ask you from your Overprotecting Children chapter. Your quote in this chapter that really stuck with me was, "It's better to empower children with simple strategies that can keep themselves safe than it is to shield them from the realities of real-world risk." So can you elaborate on that just a little? I know you were kind of going in that direction, but that's something I'd really like to hear about from you.
So one of the things I talk about in the Overprotecting Children book is about how stranger, the whole stranger danger thing.
Right.
Stranger danger is a one-way street. While it is wildly inappropriate for an adult to ask a child for help, alone and afraid, a child should feel perfectly safe in asking an adult for help. And here's the thing. Parents may say, like, "Well, I don't want my kid just like walking up to anyone." Well, your kid's not just going to walk up to anyone. Your kid is not going to walk up to someone and ask for help, someone who they don't feel comfortable walking up and asking help from, right? If there's like a group of people, they're not going to walk up to the scariest. They're going to walk up to the person that looks the most friendly. And the reason that I brought this up is that I was on a protective detail and we were walking through Central Park, and this mother, saw us, and she came up and she's like, "Are you police? I can't find my daughter." And the mom and the daughter were walking through Central Park, and they stopped somewhere. And the next thing you knew, like the daughter was gone and the mom was freaking out. Now, thankfully, about 45 minutes later, the daughter was found like sitting on a park bench, but not 50 feet away from her was like a family playing. There was, a guy selling, like hot dogs or some kind of like vending cart. And the mom was like, "Well, how come you didn't ask for help?" And she was like, "Well, you told me to never talk to strangers, and everyone was a stranger." And so I came up with this concept of like food, flags, and family. So if you see someone like selling food, or if you see a restaurant, or if you see someone who like has a food cart, like you at least know that that person has been vetted and has like gone through a background check in order to get the permit for either that restaurant or that food cart or what have you. And so that's the perfect person for your child to feel comfortable going up and asking for help. Another one is flags. If you see a flag on a building, whether it be like a police station or a firehouse or a library or a school, or if you see a flag on a uniform, whether it be a policeman or a fireman or a male person, those are people that they should feel, a soldier, those are people they should feel comfortable going up to and asking for help. And then the third F, families. If you see a mother with children or a dad with kids, or if you see a nanny in the park, like looking over, like that's someone they should feel comfortable going up to and asking for help. But the most important thing is to give them the tools and the skills that they need that will not only help them in something small, but that they can then, grow and build upon as they go throughout the rest of their life. If it's something as simple like, hey, if we get separated here while we're at the amusement park, hey, we're all going to meet like right back here at this ice cream stand, or we're going to meet here at this big flagpole, or we're going to meet here. Whether or not something will happen is unknown, but it's better to have a plan in place in case something happens rather than to wish you did have something in place when you need it most. Right. And so many parents, I think, have this concern that they don't want to burden their children with like the fears of the risks of the world around them. But the reality is like your kids are pretty perceptive of what's going on in the world. I mean, like when you and I were growing up, like it was like don't get into a car with strangers. Now we literally call strangers on our phone to come and pick us up.
It's crazy to think about that.
And so it's like, well, but you're talking to strangers, like strangers pick us up all the time. So it's just doing whatever you can. And in the book, I kind of go into like a couple different scenarios and skill sets and tools and tips and tricks that parents can use, whether it like be board games. But, I think the most important, or one of the more important takeaways is like, don't feel that you have to know everything at the time your child asks you a question. You can take the time and be like, hey, you know what? That's a really important question. I want to make sure that I give you the time. Can we talk about that, tonight at dinner? And that buys you the time to talk to your friends or do some research or go to the bookstore and get some books or watch some YouTube videos on how to talk to your kids about X, Y, or Z, so that you can go to them later that night informed and empowered about ways that they can help to keep themselves safe. And I think the more that your children, and it's also perfectly fine to say like, hey, listen, you know what? I don't know, but by tomorrow, we're both going to know. Because the more your child can trust you as a parent to be a source of information, not to have all the information, but to be a trusted source of information that they can go to when they have a question, will not only help them to feel safe and secure in the present, but will position you to be, or will help you to be very well positioned for when those more serious, birds and bees conversations, drug use conversations, partying, going off to school conversations, start coming down the road a lot later.
And you mentioned that, and I wanted to ask you, I have a daughter going off to college in another state by herself this fall. Is there any sort of tips or advice that you would give either the dumb 18-year-old that's headed off into the world or the parent who's freaking out because their 18-year-old is headed off into the world? As you're talking about, college, it's drugs, there's drinking, there's frat parties and sorority. Oh my God, I'm freaking out.
Yeah. Boys lie. Always trust your gut. Be disagreeable and don't be afraid to be impolite. Or let me rephrase that. Boys lie. Always trust your gut. And don't think for a second that just because you're being disagreeable means you're being impolite.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to pass that along.
Because boys will say anything to get what they want.
Oh, yeah.
Not just in college, throughout our entire lives. We will lie to get what we want. 2, trust your gut. If something doesn't feel right, it's not. If something it feels off, it is. And then just know that it's okay for you to say no. It's no is a full sentence. Gavin talks about this in The Gift of Fear. Understand, and this is not, and I don't mean for this to sound engendered, but by and large, no for a guy is the end of a discussion. No for a woman is the beginning of a negotiation.
And you're not being biased, you're being real, because that's really that's But unfortunately, that's what it's like.
And it's like that because of the safety trap of being too polite. Your unwillingness to offend another should never be stronger than your willingness to defend yourself.
Perfect. I actually had that on my list. Your chapter, you have a whole chapter in your book about being too polite. And that is something I am guilty of, not even so much in safety situations, but in, there's something I just really don't want to do, but I don't want to be rude, or.
Oh, listen, and it's not just that is a cross species thing. Well, not across species. Yeah. It's definitely a human thing. But I have found that I get more successful the more I say no, because now I have the time to focus on the things that are important. Whereas if I say yes to everything, my bandwidth of focus, because it's like adding water. The more you say yes to something, the more you say yes to people, the more you say yes to situations, the more you say yes to things you don't want to do, the more water you are adding to your otherwise very fine wine. And what you want to do is keep your wine as strong as possible. And the more you say no, the more strong your wine will be, the more potent it will be, the more delicious it will be, the more effective it will be. But the more you say yes, the more water gets out of it, which dilutes it down and makes it weak, and you'll have quote unquote more of it. But how effective, does it really become? Right. And it's like life is just it's equity, it's bandwidth, it's there's only so much effort you can put into what is important to you, whether that be your family, whether that be your career, whether that be your friends, whether that be your network, whether that be your hobbies or your passions or what have you. Like, we can only give so much of ourselves. And we sometimes have this belief that, if I'm operating at 20%, or if I'm operating at 75%, and I give 10% to this person and 10% to that person and 10% to this person, they're going to return that investment back to me. And the odds are they're not. No. So now you were at 75%, and now you're at like 45% because you just gave 30% away. Right. What you really need to be is, like, in order to be truly selfless, you must first be selfish. Like, Bill Gates is able to have the Gates Foundation because he was not a very nice man, but a very good businessman for a lot of years.
Yes.
And now he doesn't have to worry about being a businessman. Now he can be like a really nice man and be very generous because he decided to be selfish, and now he can be selfless. And so we as individuals, we need to understand that we need to be operating at not 100%, but at 150% so that we can give 50% away.
I like that. I really like that.
You know what I mean?
And that's not even a safety thing. That's like an in general life, everyday life ideal that you could use. That actually,
it's a self-preservation thing, because it's kind of like how when we're on an airplane, they say, put your mask on first before you put on the mask of your child.
Right.
Because if you pass out, you're not going to be good to anyone.
Right.
Like when you're training to be like a lifeguard, and they say, okay, so if you're in the water and someone goes over the pier and you jump in after them, but then the waves are going to crash you against the pylons. Whose body do you have hit the pylon first? Yours or the victim's? You have the victim's body hit the pylon first. You right. Turn so that the pylon is buffered, because that person's already unconscious.
Right.
Okay. But if you put your back to the pylon so that your head hits the pylon and you get knocked unconscious, well, now there's two unconscious people in the water. Now you're not doing, no one's doing any good. So you're not being selfish. You may be selfish by putting that person's body between you and the pole as the wave crashes, but you're doing so that you can save both of you. And it may be counterintuitive. It may come across as being mean, or it may come across as being impolite, or it may come across as like being a quote unquote asshole. But no, in the greater scope of things, what you're doing is in the interest of everyone. And don't be afraid of what social media might think, or the people on Twitter might think, or, what, Karen in accounting is going to think. Like, no one cares. No one cares. No matter the worst thing in the world. What was the worst thing? Who's a celebrity that did something stupid lately? You can't even remember because it happens so often, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. But now I can't even think of it.
I'm sure there was a celebrity who did something stupid recently in the news, and I'm sure I couldn't tell you what it was because so much other stuff has happened since then. Like literally no one's going to care in 36 hours. Remember, it used to be like, listen, a year from now, is anyone really going to care about this? Now it's like literally, no, tomorrow. Will anybody care about this tomorrow? No?
That is a really good point. That's a really good point. And when I read with the chapter on being too polite, I did a mental went back in my Rolodex of memories, and I was actually pretty proud of myself because I pulled up this memory from a few years ago. A girlfriend of mine and we went out of town to a concert, and obviously we Ubered. On the way home, though, so we Ubered there, and the Uber driver said, "I will come pick you up. I'm going to give you my cell phone number, and I will come pick you up afterwards because when the concert lets out, it's going to be crazy. You're not going to be able to get an Uber. Call me and I will come get you." And we're just like, great, that's awesome. It should have been a red flag. I know that now. Looking back, I know that should have been a red flag. But anyway, concert ended. We call the Uber driver. He does come pick us up. And my friend is quite inebriated. I had been drinking as well, but she was very friendly at that point. She was in the stage where she just loves everyone. And anyway, we wanted to stop and get a pizza. So he stopped and let us get a pizza. And then she's like, "Do you want to come to our hotel and have pizza with us?" And I'm like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And then he pulls up to the hotel and he's like getting ready to get out and come up to our hotel room. And I was like, dude, no, absolutely not. No. And I'm like dragging my friend away. And I'm like, absolutely not. Is this strange guy going to come up to our hotel room? But that was one time. It seems like a silly little thing, but looking back, I'm guilty of being too polite. And that was one time where my spidey senses, and I was like, no, absolutely not. I was proud of myself when I went back and thought of that.
I will say that's very good of you to not negotiate against our senses. And what I find quite often is it's very easy for us to not just notice red flags, but to act upon those red flags when we are serving to protect another. We are less so when we are serving to protect ourselves. And it's important because in that situation, it's very easy for you. I'm not saying that it was very easy. And I mean, by no means discounting what you did, because what you did very well may have saved both of your lives, or it could have been nothing. I don't know the framework of that, but you sensed that something was wrong. You said, "Why am I going to take this chance?" And you did nothing about it. It would be much more difficult if you were alone, drunk in the back of that car. This guy had just stopped and got you a pizza, because now you feel like there's a debt owed, or yes, you feel obligated, or and when I'm saying it's no, that's the time when you need to double down and be, disagreeable. And don't think of it as in terms of there are boundaries. And a lot of times people confuse boundaries as being the things we put around other people. No, boundaries are the things that we put around ourselves. This is my do not cross line. And if you get too close, I'll be like, "Hey, you're getting too close." But if you dare try to come over it, it's a get the fuck back.
Right.
You know Absolutely. What I'm saying?
Yes.
And you have to have that willingness to self-preserve more than anything. Because the more, and whether it be your daughter going off to college and, "Oh, just stay for one more drink," or "We don't want to go home yet." But the deal was, "Hey, we're just going to have 2 drinks and be home by midnight." You established a boundary, stick to that boundary. And just know that if people are going to disrespect it, that's fine. They can let them do them. But don't think that just because, someone else is doing something that you have to be involved in it too. The more, and like I said before, the more I say no, the more successful I get.
I like that. I like that ideal. I like that theory, that train of thought. So moving on a little, just one more question about your book, complacency. And I know that you had mentioned this a little bit earlier when we were talking, but you said in your book, we are most at risk when we feel most safe. Can you just elaborate on that just a bit? Because I think that's so important.
So this is the essence of the safety trap, right? Throughout my global experience, regardless of circumstance or scenario, time and time and time again, the warning signs of harm, the warning signs of violence are ever present, but we just fail to see the warning signs that something bad is about to happen for the simple fact that we're not expecting something bad to happen. And one of the reasons why we are most at risk when we feel most safe is because as our vigilance goes down, our risk goes up. And so it's very easy. I'll give an example. You're walking through, you're going shopping, and you pull your car into your spot and you get out of the car and you see a big sign. Hey, this place is under 24-hour surveillance. And you look up and you see the cameras, right? And then as you walk through the doors slide open, you see a guard there who's in uniform and he's got a gun on his hip. And then you see the checkout registers, or as you're walking into the door, you see that they have like those like anti-theft devices. And then as you walk inside the store, you look up and you see the domes and it's got all the security cameras. Like, wow, this place like really takes its safety, the security like really seriously. And so maybe now you put in your iPods and you turn the music up and you feel safe and you're going to go around. And then next thing you know, like someone tries to rob the place, or there's an assault, or someone comes out of the, and steals your purse or what have you.
I was thinking you're in the dressing room and somebody,
which has happened.
That was my thought. Yeah.
Which has happened.
Yeah. Or somebody.
But the thing is that all of those security features that you saw had absolutely nothing to do with your personal safety. All of those features were there to protect the products. All of those features are there to stop shoplifting, to make sure that the employees aren't taking too long of a smoke break. And to the extent that, so if something should happen, that those features can sort of aid in the investigation after something happens. Yes. But to be walking down the street and seeing a celebrity and seeing a bodyguard walking along that, next to that celebrity does not mean that that bodyguard is there for you. Like that bodyguard is there to keep that celebrity safe. So, or like the Ring camera that you may have on your front door, that's not there to keep the mailman safe. That camera is there to keep your house safe. So it's very important for us to not just see all of these security features and then automatically assume they're there for us. Right?
Right.
You have to understand their role, their form, their function, who put them in. Whoever implemented those security devices, that's who they're there for. They're not there for out of some like aspect of altruism. There needs to be some kind of reciprocal thing. And it's like one of those things where it's like one of the worst things that we can ever say to ourselves is like, oh no, what could happen here? Like the threat level on September 11th in New York City on 9/11 was like 1. It was like like petty crime, maybe a car accident. But an hour later, it was DEFCON 1. Well, and so all I say is like, and here's the thing: I'm not saying that we have to like live in fear.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
All most of us really need to succeed in staying safe is a healthy sense of skepticism and a moderate dose of vigilance. Just like, hey, listen, probably nothing's going to happen, but if it does, we're going to go out that door. And if that door is blocked, we're going to go out that window. Listen, nothing's going to happen, but if we get separated, let's meet here at the ice cream stand. Okay? Hey, listen, nothing's going to happen, but if someone should get hurt, there's a medical kit in the glove box. Hey, listen, probably nothing's going to happen, but I just double checked the spare tire to make sure that it's like inflated and functional. Hey, nothing's going to happen, but there's a spare key hidden in case we lose our first key, listen, probably nothing's going to happen, but just in case.
Probably nothing's going to happen, but just in case.
Right. Probably kitchen will probably never catch on fire, but hey, I bought an extra fire extinguisher. Let's just all go out in the backyard this Saturday and make sure we all know how to use it so that the first time having to use that fire extinguisher isn't a literal trial by fire.
Yeah, that's a good point. I have a fire extinguisher, and I don't.
Like, did you ever see?
I don't know how to use it. So
I don't remember. Like, it was like I think it was like one of like the Look Who's Talking movies with like John Travolta and like that talking baby. But there's literally a scene where like he's cooking something and the kitchen catches on fire, and he like goes and grabs. He like looks all over and finds the fire extinguisher, but then it like tries to read the instructions on how to use it. He's like, okay, pull. Meanwhile, like the places, and they like finally gets. It's like you don't need that, okay. And that's like, you and I were talking off mic about like, what do you think about people carrying like mace or a stun gun or anything like this? And I talk about this in the book in like the personal safety thing. Like self-defense tools are great, but a self-defense mindset is better. Like if you see someone that looks creepy, like down the block, that's the time to get out of that situation. Not like looking at the person and going, well, I don't know, maybe they're, and then trying to fumble for, the number one argument against anyone trying to use like a handgun or a mace or a stun gun in some kind of like self-defense situation is to watch the everyday citizen try to take a selfie of a celebrity using their cell phone. Right. Because I can take a picture of my breakfast with like pinpoint precision. Right. And then I can filter it. But Taylor Swift walks into the room. He's like, "Oh my God, it's Taylor Swift!" And they can't get their like. I can't tell you how many like red carpets or like meet and greets or whatever, where like people know that they're fifth person, fourth person, and they still can't figure out how to get their cell phone turned on, or they're like, "Oh my God, it's blurry. Can we do it again?" Like, no, there's like 100 other people here. Like you had ample warning that this was like you stood in line for 3 hours to get this photo. You couldn't get it like turned on. Like and cell phones are something that we carry with us that we use like
every day,
all the time. Like we are so over familiar with how to use a cell phone. So there's something called like the Dunning-Kruger Effect, which basically says that the lower someone's ability, they just don't have the skill set required to recognize their own level of incompetence. So what happens is someone will go and take a self-defense course, right? And they think that, like I learned how to like kick him in the balls and then punch, gouge him in the eyes and then like punch him in the throat and then give him a big push while saying, "Hi-ya," and then I run away. And I did it once. There's that old saying, like an amateur does something until they can get it right, but a professional does it until they can't get it wrong.
Yeah.
Just because you watch like a Bruce Lee movie doesn't mean you know Kung Fu. So just because like you have familiarization with something doesn't mean that you have training with something.
Right.
And where a lot of people get themselves into trouble is they go out and buy that mace or they go out and buy that stun gun and they use it maybe once just to know how to use it. And then they never use it again.
Yeah.
But they have this false sense of security that they have it. Right. You never want to be in a situation where you are hiding behind your tool. You always want your tool to be hiding behind you. And so if you are not going to put in the time, the effort, and the energy into having that tool become second nature when moments matter most, then really what you're doing is you're introducing another tool that the bad guy can use against you. So I think that's something to keep in mind. I'm not saying that I'm a gun. I'm always within arm's reach of something.
Well, and that's actually a conversation I had with Nancy from Damsel in Defense, because I have my concealed weapons permit. I was a Navy police officer. I do know how to use my weapon. I do go to the range and practice. I've never had to pull it, thank God, in real life. But that was a point she made as far as carrying a weapon or anything. If you're not properly trained, what are you going to do? I mean, you're going to fumble. You're not going to take the safety off, or you're not going to hit the right button on the stun gun. Or
right.
I agree with that 100%. I personally don't have a stun gun or mace, but I think maybe I should. And
well, I think here's
talking
the thing.
To you, if I do, I'm going to practice.
Right, because here's the thing. I think you're a veteran. You are familiar with firearms. You're trained in the use of firearms, but you also, because you have that training, carry yourself with a certain protective posture that makes you less likely to be a target. Because you're not afraid to look at someone in the eye. You're not afraid to keep your head on a swivel. You're not afraid to look for the things that are out of place.
Yeah, I joke with my husband. I say I live my life in fight or flight mode because I'm constantly like, Yeah,
and you probably don't live in the red, but you're probably in a healthy color orange. You're always vigilant, right?
Right. Yes.
Because you don't ever want to live in a constant like, should I stay or should I go? Should I stay? Should I go? Threat, no threat. Threat, no threat. But you're like, that looks weird. Probably gonna stay away from that. Is a good way to live, because bad guys looking for, like, regardless of circumstance or scenario, the number one most influential factor of target selection is likelihood of success. So, like lions stalking the gazelles in the wild, they don't go after the strongest of the herd. They go after the weakest of the herd. They go after the ones who look like they have an injury, or who aren't that fast, or who aren't that particularly aware of their surroundings. Bad guys looking for targets of opportunity are, exactly the same. I had a friend who was in DC staying at a hotel. This is like, in the middle of the pandemic, and, the hotel restaurant wasn't open, but there was like a little alcove outside that had some like refreshments and coffee and stuff. And so she goes outside, puts her purse on the chair next to her, grabs a cup of coffee, is smoking a cigarette. And this guy comes downstairs, a little disheveled looking, doesn't really look like he fits in with everyone else. And there's another lady sitting here, and there's a couple guys sitting over there, and another couple to her left. And this guy just looks out of place. But she says, well, they've lowered the rates here because of COVID and everything. So, I guess everyone's just a little dodgy maybe, and doesn't think anything of it. And then looks down, and the next thing she knows, this guy's throwing an arm into her to push her back, is grabbing her purse and is running away. And she's like, I don't understand why he targeted me. Like everyone else, there was other people there dressed nicely. And I was like, well, because you were being too polite. You intrinsically knew that he was out of place, but then you didn't want to be impolite. So you didn't stare at him, and you didn't do anything to improve your protective posture. And you're smoking, and you have a nice purse, and he knows that you already looked at him, but now you're too ashamed to keep looking at him. So you look down, and he knows that you're smoking. So you have disposable income, and you're staying in a nice hotel. So there's probably some nice valuables in your purse, and your purse was closer to him than you were to her. He just did a likelihood of success assessment and targeted you. But if you had just simply not just kept looking at him, but maybe kept your head up so that you could catch him in your periphery, or maybe if you had just moved your purse to the other side of you so it was harder for him to get to, or if you had pulled out your cell phone and just been like, yeah, I saved you a seat, or done something to promote your own protective posture, the likelihood of him choosing someone else probably would have been greater. But the fact that you assessed that there was something wrong, but didn't want to be impolite about it, and instead of acting as a judge in the conviction of your own protection, acted as a defense lawyer for the promotion of his, is ultimately what put you in jeopardy. It had nothing to do with you being a bad person. It had nothing to do with you, but criminals assess likelihood of success. And if someone has looked at you, gone, oh, this doesn't seem right, but I don't want to be rude, and you look away while having a purse sitting up front, and everyone else is, either making good eye contact or is engaging in some kind of a protective position, you basically just gave him the window of opportunity he needed to be successful in his exploit. It's not personal against you. It was just, he just assessed the scene, and you were the weakest link.
So
all you want to do is not be the weakest link.
So one thing that's coming to mind, even if you aren't super confident, even if you are afraid, fake it till you make it. Eye contact, head up, be assertive, even if you don't feel that way inside.
Listen, do you want to know the one thing bad guys hate more than anything?
What's that?
The removal of anonymity. So even if she had just said to that guy, hey, black jacket, what's going on today? Right? Now he knows that he can pick her out of a lineup. Or if you're walking through, If you're walking to your car and you think someone might be following you and he's got a red cap on, you turn around and go, red cap, right? You're never going to see that guy again. If that guy is not a threat to you, he might look at you and go, hey, blue shirt, right? But if he is someone who did mean you ill will, he may go, shit, now I'm ID'd. And now I'm gonna bob and weave and walk the other way.
Wow. Sometimes that's advice I've never heard before. I like it.
Sometimes just participating in your own protection is nothing more than letting someone else know you see them.
I like that. That is something that's going to stick with me. Is that in your book? I don't think it is. Did I just get some extra here?
You got a little extra.
Awesome. All right. Well, quick question. Are you going to be in Vegas this year? CrimeCon?
Yes, I will be there one way or the other. I don't know if I'm going to be a speaker or a presenter or both, but Ronan and I will be in Vegas for CrimeCon regardless, even if we're just there to take in the show.
Awesome. Well, we'll be there. We're going to be on Podcast Row, and you guys can use code Paradise for 10% off your ticket. I say that in every episode. So
you should.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing you again in Vegas. It's going to be a really good time. You have any?
It's going to be such a fun weekend.
It is. We're actually, I probably shouldn't. No, never mind. I'm not going to overshare.
That's another safety trap that's in the book. We can talk about that.
It's real quick. I did share something the other day on Facebook. It was a quick, not even. What happened was I had an appointment at the VA, and it was just blood work. And I was actually in and out before my actual appointment time, which if you deal with the VA, you understand what I'm talking about. And I put on Facebook, I checked in at the VA and I said, I'm actually in and out before my appointment time, which is amazing. And then literally I thought to myself, now everyone knows where I am. But
yeah, always post after you do something.
Yeah.
Had a great time at the pool party. Can't wait for the pool party.
Right. Yes. That's another thing in your book. And I would encourage everyone who's listening to buy the book or download the audiobook. It's great advice. It's great material. It's only going to help you in your everyday life. Stay safe. Stay safer than you would be if you didn't know the things that you would know after you read the book. Does that make sense?
It does. And if anyone if anyone listens to this and goes out and buys the book and then they share it on social media and they tag us, we'll randomly pick someone to send them a signed copy.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Spencer. That's awesome. Yes. Tag Paradise After Dark. And what's your Instagram?
Instagram is, if you just Google Spencer Coursen, you'll see that I'm an actor and all the other stuff will pop up. But my Instagram is at s.coursen, Coursen, at s.coursen. And website is Coursen Security Group. Safety Trap is thesafetytrap.com. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and our listeners and answering all my kooky questions and
my
talking
pleasure.
about
this
your
was
book.
A lot of fun.
It was. I can't wait to see you again in April.
I will see you in Vegas.
All right. I'll talk to you later. Thank you again.
Cheers.
Have a good night.
All right, everyone. I know I wasn't part of that, but I guess that's it for tonight.
Again, thank you guys for listening. And if you'd like to support the show, please subscribe to our Patreon again at patreon.com/Palmahawk Media. That's PALMAHAWK Media.
All right. And if you check out our website, you will find links to our social media, our Patreon, merch store, and much, much more. So, everyone, we really, really, really thank you so much for listening
To Paradise After Dark.
Duck, 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 duck.